Sister Mary Taylor, OLA, Woman of Africa, Woman of Belfast too. Your calling came early in your life.
Yes, I would say fairly early, yes. Not as early as some people, but I was, well, eventually before I answered fully, I would have been 21.
Yeah, and was it family created? Were you in an environment of a loving Catholic family that was encouraging you?
Yes, I was. I would have been born into a typical traditional Irish family. I was the second of 7 children. And yes, I would have been encouraged in my vocation. In other words, there wouldn't have been any blocks put in my way.
Yeah.
If that's what I wanted, that's fine.
And positively, what kind of influences were offered to you to guide you towards your vocation?
Well, I would say, for me, I would just like to start by saying that I had no flashing inspirations as regards God calling me to religious life. I would often have likened it to, if you think of, an old sheepdog, loving, gentle, but all the time encircling, nudging, coaxing along the way.
You reckon God's like this old lovable sheepdog?
Yes.
Come along, Mary, come and have a notion.
Come along. And you know what, the sheep, when the sheep go this way, they're brought back. Sheep go the other way, they're brought back. And I feel that that's the way God has worked for me, not only then, but throughout my whole life.
And have you always had that sense of God being in your life?
I have, yes, I have. He's always been there. He's always been there. And if I haven't been there, he has always been there, you were asking me about influences. I had an aunt Eileen, who as a young woman, as a young lay woman, nurse, went out to work in a place called Navrongo in Ghana, in the NTs. Now, then it was an extremely rural outpost, and even by today's standards it would be regarded as fairly far off the map. But somehow, looking back then, I knew that someday, somehow, I was going to follow in her footsteps to Africa. Now, at that particular stage, I wouldn't have regarded myself as entering a religious order, but I knew I would go to Africa.
It was Africa first, vocation to religious life second.
Africa first and foremost. And then I also had a grand aunt in the order, our Sisters of Our Lady of Apostles. And while she wouldn't have been actively encouraging me, she was always there, So I suppose, as I told you, like this, been nudged here and there, I began to say to myself, this is getting serious, better need some serious thinking. And I began to look around what my options were, what the different scenarios that might be available. There was religious life. The lay apostolate now was coming into its own, and they were working in countries throughout the world, including Africa. But deep down I knew the path I was going to take, and that path led me to the Missionary Sisters of Our Lady of Apostles, who were founded specifically to work with women and children in Africa.
Wow. Sister Order of the Society of African Missions.
That's right.
Goodness
They were founded just before us, and we were founded because when they went to work in Africa, they realized that there were areas culturally where men could not go in. And that's how we were born, to answer that call to women and children. So the two seem to dovetail really, if you like, And so I did join the Sisters of Our Lady of Apostles, and I went to Africa.
It's a glorious day that you did, because I know Sister Paulina of the OLAs of Africa. She is now the head mistress of our St. Mary's School project in Papari, northwest Nigeria. And you were instrumental in making sure that her path was clear to do what God wanted her to do.
I was. My first missionary journey was, believe it or not, back to Ghana. Now, it had absolutely nothing to do with years before that, where my aunt was in Ghana. I was sent to Ghana because we believe in we are sent to places, So I was sent to Ghana. I was in a place called Cape Coast and then Elmina, and I worked in a vocational school there. I taught for 3 years in a vocational school. Then I returned to Ireland and retrained as a nurse and midwife, and went back then to Africa, to Nigeria.
Wow.
9 years in Ibadan in the south, and a further 9 years in Kaduna in the north, and that is where I met Paulina.
Tell the people about your meeting with Paulina and what became of Paulina.
I had all my missionary life in Nigeria had been nursing, but I was asked then around 1988-89 to go to the north of Nigeria to encourage and foster northern vocations. We have a big number of African sisters, but at that time we had I think we had only one maybe northern girl. So I was sent off then to, as I said, encourage and foster northern vocations. And my first 2 girls were really, as I say out there, sons, daughters of the soil, Esther and Paulina. So Paulina came to me as a young girl, who was now a young woman, you know. And she came from a very rural area in Nigeria. And the first Easter we were there, we went to visit the families, the girls and myself. And we went into the inside, into the interior. And I began to wonder, were we in the right path at all, you know? And I said, Paulina, do public vehicles pass this way? And she said, oh yes, sister, every Friday. So, and we eventually arrived at Paulina's house, and her father, who has just recently passed away, and his wife came out to meet us. Gave us a great welcome and showered us with gifts of honey and hens and eggs. And when I was coming away, I remember thinking to myself, I really don't know, I cannot even for myself put into words what is vocation. But if this girl has a vocation, it's been handed down to her by the hand of God.
Yeah, very much so.
And in that, it kind of even can resonate with myself, you know, because sometimes we wonder, you know, do I have a vocation? Am I sure? Especially in the early days, you know. And I thought, this is for it. This is real, you know. Yes. And so Paulina then, she was with me for 2 years. She had very little of an educational background because of her situation. So I realised, come what may, and my own attitude with the girls that I had was, I don't know whether they will become religious sisters or not, but if they leave me better equipped than they were when they came in, and go back into their own villages or towns and be good Christian women, leaders in their own communities, that for me would have been okay. Very okay.
Well, she did more than that.
But Paulina, yes, Paulina then
teacher.
went on ahead. She went for further studies. She did her teacher training. She went to university, and she became a teacher, and a very good teacher, very good teacher. Paulina is gifted working with children, gifted. And I saw that right away from the beginning. And so Paulina today is headmistress of a very fine school. I had the privilege of visiting that school a few years ago, and you know, I was bursting with pride.
Oh, of course,
yes,
and she was so proud to see you there.
Yes, she was.
But the African saga began many generations previously. You, in a sense, when you went to Africa, you were standing on the shoulders of giants, the women of Ireland who were OLAs of Ireland, who were there ahead of you.
That's right, that's right. I never lost that sense of awe of these women, you know. We talk about the valiant women of the gospel, you know. These valiant OLA sisters, Irish OLA sisters, who had left at a much younger age and gone into a much more demanding situation than I was in, but they laid the foundations for which I always regarded myself, had the privilege of building on those foundations. And I hope that I, like them, I am able to hand on the baton to young African women, these African women who really touched and enriched my own life, you know, in a way that only God and myself would know. And
it's been done in a way, you've almost worked yourself out of a job in Africa, because the lovely thing has happened. Africans looking after Africans.
That's right. And that has always been part of our charism, that we go into a place, we would regard ourselves as pioneer women. You know, we go in, we get a place established, we hand it over, and we move on. And I like to think that's what happened in my life, you know, and in the lives of so many other people.
Many challenges came your way all through your African life. Challenges that were faced, challenges that were, to a greater or lesser extent, overcome. you weren't on your own in that. You have a very strong sense of the partnership with the shepherd, with God.
Yes, I have. As you know, every life has its ups and downs, and my life is no different, And without the ups and downs, life would be very boring. And God doesn't do boring. We only have to look around us to witness that. And no, God never left me. And there were times, and many times, when I would have asked myself, ask God, do you really know what you're asking me to do? Are you sure? I can't be sure. But he did know. And he kept his part of the bargain, because he said to me, Mary, I will never leave you. And he didn't. And, again and again, this image of the sheepdog, God came to me again, and he would have encircled me with love, encouragement, coaxed me, cajoled me, nudged me, and very often, really, if truth be told, he had to bend down and carry me.
Indeed.
Which he did, yes.
The mission continues, no longer in Africa, but you're a woman of mission, and that continues in the modern age.
Yes, that's right. I always say that I never had any, Pauline conversions. Nobody stopped me on the road to Damascus or any other road. Instead, I, have come to realize that rather than conversions, my life has been very blessed with convictions, which for me is more important. And one of these convictions is, I am a missionary. I am always a missionary, and always will be a missionary. And, that really is, that trust has kept me going and keeps me going. And I often think of the words of Merton when he's, I would like to describe myself in those words at some stage in my life, that I am a woman simply living the gospel without fanfare. Much like those women I spoke of earlier. They lived their lives, they worked their lives, they witnessed the gospel, they lived the gospel without fanfare. And women coming behind me will do the same, I have no doubt.
And Mary, the women who will come behind you, young girls now, some of them not young girls, women with a certain life experience behind them, is there still a role for vocations within the OLAs?
I very definitely, yes. I'm convinced of that. And if I said no, I feel I would be devaluing my own vocation. Now, I would, religious. I do believe there is a future for religious life. Now, having said that, I would be the first to tell you that religious life is not for everybody, but it's certainly for somebody. And I think that has to be listened to and attended to. That there is, as I said, it won't be the religious life that I would have entered, because back then and way before that, religious orders were formed to answer needs of the times and the era, and those needs have changed. But the one thing that I really believe in is that there is, and there will always be a need, a longing, a thirst within the human heart for something more than. And this more than, which I certainly couldn't put into words. I wouldn't even attempt to, because I think that those words are spoken in the human heart. It's God who speaks to the human heart. And I'm going back again where he will nudge
you
encourage,
in the right way.
And he will do the same with other people, to create a growing awareness of this thirst for something more than. And as I said, God doesn't shout. He doesn't, for the most part, he doesn't send these flashing lights and clanging cymbals or anything like that. He whispers. I think he whispers because he doesn't want us to be afraid.
Yeah, so people.
And he is the one who will, we must listen to our hearts. We must listen to what's been said in here. Because that's where we'll hear him. And that's where, he will fulfill that longing. Nobody else, nothing else, nothing, no matter what we're doing or saying. He's the one that does it, not us.
Mary, Sister Mary, go well.
Thank you. Thank you. May I just say one last word? I have just one word to say, that God has blessed me all my life. My parents, my families, my faithful friends who have encouraged me all my life, who were there. They shared the joys, they shared the sorrows, but they were always there. They more or less let me know that they were always there for me, as well as my own sisters and our Sisters of Our Lady of Apostles. And women who have gone before me, women who are still with me, and of whom I'm very proud. And please God, the women who come after me.